Okay, so much to talk about here in the CFL from last week and this coming week, including Labor Day weekend. But considering the response, even in the US, we'll probably talk about that one play. Coming up next on the Rouge, Rouge, and Rouge CFL podcast. Okay, welcome to the Rouge, White, and Blue CFL podcast. Let me first say happy Labor Day weekend coming up. My name is Oz Davis. I'm the host of the show. Joining me, as always, is my co host, Joe Pritchard. Joe, how is it going today?
It's going all right. Labor Day weekend is upon us. It's always a wonderful weekend for CFL fans, that and the next weekend. But I'm not going to take up too much time because I think you have a point to make.
I have a point to make. How about I have an axe to grind? No, I'm joking. Um, okay, so we could be, and we will be talking about this previous game, these previous four games last week, all of which came down to a touchdown or less. We will be talking about another fantastic showing, I think, by all the East teams again this week. We can talk about how the top three teams in the league are now in the East. We could even be talking about how the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are suddenly in second place in the West, thanks to the never ending plummet of the BC Lions and Saskatchewan Roughriders. But I think, first of all, we have to talk about the Rouge. Nothing will make American sports headlines faster than a game decided by a Rouge. The fact that the Argos won this game against the Riders by missing a field goal at the last second just blows minds south of the border. And of course, this was an occasion for many people, both in the States and in Canada, to talk about how stupid the Rouge is, about how we need to get rid of it, et cetera, et cetera. Joe, what's your take on the Rouge? Are you losing your faith any?
No,
Okay.
I mean, what did you just say? You said that nothing gets American headlines liked. And I like it when Americans watch the CFL because that means more money for the CFL, which means they do better, which means I might actually get to talk about it on the street someday. That'd be fantastic. That's also a pipe dream. Same time, same time. Again, it's an attention getter, and in a league that is in this just vast sports universe now, where it's not just a few things that draw attention; it's all sorts of other things trying to draw our attention.
Yeah.
Why would you get rid of your attention grabber?
Yeah, I guess, except it is negative attention, right? I mean, um, on the whole, in the South. Um, I uh, I have to admit, I had a little coming to Jesus moment with the Rouge because, okay, never would I suggest elimination of the Rouge, But I guess the problem for me is, yeah, it does seem kind of silly when there's no chance to return the missed kick. You know what
That's
I'm
a
saying?
popular sentiment, yes.
Yeah. So I would like, because I mean, look, they could have just lined up Hilarahu on the left side and just, try and kick it out of the stadium. Why even bother going for the goalpost at that point? Right?
That's actually a strategy that's been used.
Right. Right. I mean, like, I don't even know why they lined up for it. Why did they even bother? And so I think it would be nice if you could tweak it that way. But I also think that if you did eliminate this, okay, so the ball has to stay in the field of play to get the Rouge, which I think this would be a good idea, because the Rouge, I think, is supposed to be a reward for special teams coverage, right? I mean, we saw how Montreal, not last week, but the week prior, we saw how Montreal burn, Saskatchewan on the Rouge, right, with that 128-yard return. Okay, so I think the Rouge should be, at its ideal, it should be a reward for the special teams. Okay, I think if you get rid of the kick the ball out of play, it's not a Rouge. I think you should have the ball stays live if it hits the crossbar. I'm not sure why this can't be a rule, because I'll tell you what, it's a heck of a lot harder to bounce a ball off the post than it is to miss and kick it 30 yards out of bounds. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Mhm.
I think that hitting the goalpost should keep the ball in play in the CFL. I mean,
I mean, I'm all for things that create more chaos. I'll definitely take that one under advisement. I think I like that, though.
okay, all right. We've just solved the world, Joe. Okay. All right. Let's get into these games then. And the first game was Toronto Argonauts 20, Saskatchewan Roughriders 19. Um, there was the Rouge, and other than that, it was a lot of field goals in this game. 8 in total out of 9. The only one missing is that last one by Liam Hilarahu and Brett Laughton. Um, Why did this happen? Why this baseball game? Well, first of all, there was no running game for either of these teams. Frankie Hickson, who blew up a few weeks ago against Montreal, has just not shown much since then. He's about the only running back for the Riders on the roster, it seems like, because in this game he had what? Yeah, 16 carries for just 79 yards, right? Meanwhile, the Riders' running defense, which all season has been the best in the league, really just shut down Kadeem Carey. 11 carries for 35 yards. Somebody must have told them that he was on my fantasy team last week, because wow, really, like, just the lowest production by Carey all season. Chad Kelly was in his debut. I would put him on the shakier side of these new quarterbacks coming back. He was okay, 24 of 39, 322 yards, no touchdowns versus one pick. He had one nice run, but the only touchdown by the Argos was scored by Cameron Dukes on a goal line plunge. Let's see. Oh, and I definitely wanted to talk about this one. On the Riders side was Trevor Harris. Now, Trevor Harris had a heck of a breakout game the week before last. In his first 5 quarters since coming back, okay, I know, small sample size, but in his first 5 quarters, he was 39 of 48 for 447 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 picks. Okay. In the last 3 quarters of this game, 10 of 19 for 92 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks. Okay. So here we have two offenses, very low watt offenses, despite the return of their starting quarterbacks, which, Joe, If either of these teams can you feel better about?
I'd feel better about Toronto
Okay.
because they've had all of this time without their starting quarterback. They have him back. Regardless of your feelings about it, he's back, and he probably will be for at least the next few weeks.
Hmm.
Um, so they're on the upswing on that side of things. They've maintained a decent record. They're in a playoff spot at the moment. They're probably not going to get caught by Hamilton, and the West is definitely not chasing them. All they need to do is focus on let's get to November. Whereas with the Riders, yes, they're in first place right now, but it's the shakiest first place in the West I have ever seen. I did
Yep.
not follow the 2000 or 2001 seasons all that closely,
Right.
which would be about the last time the West looked like this. Um, they're on the downslide. They started out hot. They do have Trevor Harris back. It's been a couple games. Shea Patterson guided them through through the injury, about what you could have hoped from a backup with not a lot of experience. Harris comes back. It doesn't seem to fix anything. This is the time where we need to see the difference between Corey Mace and the last regime, because we've been touting Corey Mace as somebody that's going to change the culture. Well, right now we haven't seen a lot of change. It's been a half a season. It hasn't been all that much time to make these changes. But as soon as any sort of problem comes up where they're no longer rolling, it seems like over the past 2.5 years now, anytime they hit a bump in the road, the wheels come off. So it's going to be time to see, okay, can they put the wheels back on the car and get moving again? Because it'd be a damn good time for them to get moving with back to back with Winnipeg coming up.
Yeah.
Uh, if they win one of the two, they have the tiebreaker, even though with their tie, the tiebreaker may be irrelevant anyway.
Right.
At the same time, you want to establish some momentum. You want to put Winnipeg back down into the crowd because Winnipeg has come basically hit bottom early in the season and is now bouncing back up to what closer to what expectations were anyway. So this is the time. Like, let's see what you got. This show us that you can make a difference.
Yeah, the Bombers are on a 5-2 run, and I know you want to get to the Bombers, but this is one thing that's just blown me away about these Riders. Is okay, I can understand these team cultures. Where a team, a franchise is accustomed to winning, at least being competitive. They are accustomed to losing, right? Just throwing these games away. But here are the Riders, and they have this very specific malady where, again, they're starting these seasons 5-1, 6-0, 6-1, or whatever, and then just falling off the table. Now, that's a very specific team culture. And again, they shook things up. They cleaned house. 4 or 5 years ago, they cleaned house and brought in all new, but still, this bizarre tendency remains. How does this happen? I mean, like, what kind of bizarre team culture is going on in Saskatchewan? Very strange stuff. This defies logic. What has happened to the Riders this season? This
No, and it
really should not have
always
happened.
feels like they are less than the sum of their parts. And
Yeah.
that's been the case for the last 5 years.
No, no. Yep. Makes sense.
And that's
Okay.
post Chris Jones. And we
Oh
know how well that's been going for
yeah.
anybody that's had him lately, right?
Right. Right. All right. Let's talk about Chris Jones. Let's talk about the Bombers. Game 2 of the week was Winnipeg Blue Bombers 26, Hamilton Tiger Cats 23. This is the first game in Hamilton for new defensive coordinator Chris Jones. Um, First off, 3-point game against the probably the worst team in the league. I think we can say that right now. Um, but the truth is, as Joe well knows, aside from BC, the Bombers haven't blown out anyone this season. Other than the two big wins at BC, the Bomber wins are 9-4-3.
Hmm.
So not too surprising, but Bombers get the job done. Now, I guess for me, the storyline of the game, unfortunately, was how both of these teams have really been feeling the injury bug this season. And Jesus, some like major happenings in this game with regard to injuries. Stanley Bryant, the offensive lineman for Winnipeg, was carted off, but reports in the local media yesterday said that he's going to play this next game despite spending the night in the hospital. And of course, before the game, the Bombers were greeted with the not so welcome news that Adam Bighill is on the 6-game disabled list.
And he
Um,
is practicing today.
oh,
So
he
that
is? Okay.
that may not end up being a long-term injury.
Wild. Oh, okay, good for them. Good for them because, yeah, at this point, Winnipeg feels a little bit like a house of cards. Strange to say when they're on a 5-2 run, but I think they're taking advantage of the incompleteness of some of these Western teams. Um, Hamilton had a few injuries in this game. Will Sunderland, the defensive back, went down twice in the fourth quarter of this game. Haven't seen anything on his injury, however. Stavros Katsatonis missed some game time. But it seems he'll be playing on the Labor Day weekend. So I'll tell you, Hamilton could use these cornerbacks because the secondary was the all-star of this game for the Ticats. 3 picks from Zach Galeros, and I haven't seen that in a while. Can you recall the last time Galeros threw 3 picks? So,
Mm, I
it's been
do.
a while.
It's been an issue all season. I don't know about 3,
Yeah,
but it's been 1 or 2 every game. It seems
yeah.
like I know BC last year when they had a pass rush, and we'll get to that because they may have one again. Um, they were causing all sorts of merry havoc with that too, as far as turnovers go. Uh, but yeah, it's been a tough season for Zach. Uh, just the downfield game isn't there like it was last year, and he's had different receiving cores pretty much every game.
Yeah.
The offensive line is different this year too, maybe not giving him quite as much time, but regardless, there's just not a lot of spark in this offense. They're very, very good still at the grind them down game, but but if they don't have that going on, they're in trouble.
Hmm. Hmm. So again, the Bombers are in a very strange situation. They've been on this 5-2 run, yet it still feels like they're backing their way up the Western standings with the Lions and the Riders in free fall. So go ahead, take the pulse on Blue Bombers fandom for me, Joe. Where do you guys stand right now? How do you feel about this team right now?
I would say cautiously optimistic,
Okay.
which,
Good.
given where we were, is much better than it was.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think there's a ceiling here,
Mhm.
and the offense is going to have to start. Besides the one game with Calgary where the scoreboard was spinning, there
Yeah.
hasn't been a lot of points production from the offense,
Mm.
and it's half a season now. It's not just hey they're slow out of the gates. It's yeah you're slow out of the gates, but you're like you also tripped in the first in the on the first turn. You better get up and get going.
Yeah. Right. Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you for
Now
that.
it's been enough
Dr. Pritchard.
because the defense has been stellar,
Mhm.
and they were again this game. But when the defense is not, they need the offense to rise up and do something about it. So hopefully they can get it in sync where if the defense is going to have less of an impact on the game if the offense is able to step in there. Uh, Now, we did mention Chris Jones off the top of
Yep.
talking about this game. It was very clear that he was running a Chris Jones defense. Not a lot of rush from not a
Right.
lot of players rushing, dropping a lot back into the secondary might have
Right.
caused some of the issues back there for Zach.
Mhm.
Not having the deep balls available
Mhm.
and making the interceptions confusing him because he did mention, yep, that was a patented Chris Jones defense in the first week. So so he's definitely already making an impact in Hamilton.
Yeah. This was the next bit in my notes. Throughout this game, of course, TSN was just heaping the praise on Chris Jones, giving him a lot of shots on the sidelines there. But here's the thing, Joe. I mean, that coverage slowed to a stop in the second half. Like, I don't think that the Ticats having an aggressive secondary is new. I mean, it's nice to see a little bit of zip, a little bit of attention back there. But that's nothing new. The thing about the Ticats these past few seasons is no pass rush. And again, I didn't see anything different there. Okay, Nick Usher had 2 sacks. Great game for him. But Jesus, he had one going into this game this
Hmm.
season.
And,
Jamal Peters was great. He had 4 tackles for a loss. The rest of the team had one. I mean, again, like you can't. I mean, you can make the secondary look pretty, but if they're not going to hurry the quarterback, I mean, this 3 picks could have been 6. If they had actually put some pressure in there.
and they
But
did. They got more on
some
more pressure than a Hamilton team usually gets on the
that's
quarterback.
true. That's true.
Mind you, I mean, Winnipeg was down to literally their last lineman uh,
Mhm.
because of the injuries and Bryant's sickness. Hopefully, that bounces back as well as we're hoping it does. Um, but yeah, I mean, if you're not going to get a pass rush, what's better than dropping it into coverage and making the quarterback make the throws?
Yeah, yeah.
Because
I mean,
you could rush 6, but if you're not getting home, you might as well not.
right. Right. And I feel like they've almost jettisoned that that part of the game, no matter who is the coordinator there. Um, okay, so here we go. I think that if you put the Hamilton defense together with the BC Lions defense, you might have something. Game 3 of the week. Ottawa Redblacks 34, BC Lions 27. Now, for the Lions, as far as I'm concerned, okay, I know that the quarterback is trying to get into the thick of things, okay? But for me, this is the same old story. Look, the passing game may be terrible right now on the offense, but this secondary is just the worst. They're just not picking up the slack like you see happening in Montreal, in Winnipeg. Okay, when the offenses goes down, your defense has got to pick it up. Look, in the past 5 games now, this goes back to before the bye, before they started dropping games like this. Okay, BC has given up in the passing game 307, 295, 265, 288, and 390 to Drew Brown this week. Okay. They've produced in the passing game 192, 86, 187, 185, and 234. Some of which was coming from the backup this week. Okay. By average, that's a lot versus a little. Okay. The difference in those 5 games is 120 yards. This just isn't sustainable for BC.
No, it's
It's
not. And Farhan Lalji had a 10-minute video uh, just going over the BC's ills, and
oh my God.
there's multiple issues going on there. What's not an issue is that it's clear that ownership and the management team is behind throwing anything they can at this team to say, let's get moving, let's get going. Matthew Betts is coming back now. They pulled Nathan Rourke a couple weeks ago. I mean, they're clearly going to do everything in their power to give this team no excuses to produce. And if I'm a BC fan, I'm not loving what happened this past month. It hasn't been a good time. I mean, clearly, the expectations are higher. The expectations, honestly, should be Grey Cup or bust, given they're hosting it and they've been knocking on the door for the last 2
Yeah,
years.
this is the window.
It's not happening so all of a sudden this last month is a big slump, especially when they had a chance to bury Winnipeg. I've been over that multiple times. I will not get back on that soapbox. But the management is not giving them any excuses. They're going to bring in anybody they can. Salary cap be damned, and good for them for doing that. If they are indeed going to go over the cap, like this is the reason why. You're hosting a Grey Cup, you've got a multitude of talented players, and you looking for that one last thing to give that team a spark. That's when you risk the penalties for going over. Do it. I'm all for it.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I mean, somehow BC still has the top two receivers in the league,
Hmm.
and yet it's a third place team. I mean, and the sorry secondary. It's not surprising. It's not surprising. I mean, it's great to be giving up 30 points a game when you're scoring 40. But when you're having games of fewer than 100 passing yards, you can't. Your defense has got to step up. It's got to step up. And I mean,
Yeah,
this is
and
the
and there
opposite of stepping up.
and sometimes there's nothing you can do as a defense. You can give up 20 points, and if your offense is only going to score 10, you're
Yeah,
not going to win.
yeah,
At the same time, they might need you to go beyond being average at best. They might need you to go pitch a shutout or give up maybe one or two scores and give that offense a little bit of breathing room. Now, that offense shouldn't need it with all the talent they have, but sometimes they don't
yeah,
get to sync.
yeah,
So if they can get themselves back into sync and start lighting up the scoreboard again, like we all know they can, maybe we look back on this as, hey, this is when this team had their struggles, they overcame them, they're worthy champions because they got out of this mess. But right now,
yeah,
it's not looking too hot.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's a question of, is this a depression or a recession? Right now it looks like a depression because it's hard to see a way out. What are you going to do? You have two of the most, at least, at the beginning of the season, you now have two of the most, wanted quarterbacks in this league, right? You have, like I said, at least statistically, the top two receivers in the game. That's a lot of star power just right off the top. And it's just
Right.
like, I
And
can't.
and the salary numbers might not even end up going over the cap simply because you've had so many players on the sixth game and going
Yeah.
through the sixth game. Nathan Rourke's only going to get paid for half the season. Matthew Betts is
Yep.
only going to get paid for half the season. You might have the room to do this
Mhm.
and not even go over, but like this is the excuse to go over. You're hosting the Grey Cup. You've got star power. It's not clicking for some reason. Let's try to find another solution.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Especially when they've come from your system and can plug and play.
Mhm. Now you mentioned Matthew Betts. Matthew Betts is coming back this week. Uh, what kind of effect can he have?
Well, it'd be nice to have a pass rush, right?
Nice to have something happen on that defense.
Yeah.
Um,
You get a good pass rush, you get Matthew Betts in there, uh, could do nothing but help because a good pass rush makes your secondary, which has been your weak point, a whole lot better because they have to cover a guy for 2 seconds rather than three.
mhm, mhm. Um, okay. Um, Tough to not be negative about BC after this game, but real easy to be positive about Ottawa to some extent. Once again, it doesn't matter who Ottawa has at quarterback. They're
Mm.
winning these games. They're scoring a lot of points. The gut feeling is to say when Ottawa goes to British Columbia, not BC, because they're going to Victoria for the Touchdown Pacific game. But it's tempting to take Ottawa in this game and say they might sweep. However, Ottawa just got killed this week. Jalen Ackland was carted off. Here's another one. What is happening in the CFL this season? Braylon Addison didn't finish the game. Javon Santos Knox did finish the game, but reportedly he's on crutches now. And according to Bob Dice, as reported by the Ottawa Citizen, Addison is going to be on the sixth game. So, not great news for the Red Blacks here. But I wanted to ask you this one, Joe. Okay. So, if you're Dice, all right, you might suspect that your team is going to be a bit weak for the next few games. What's your game plan? All right. You have a 1.5 game / 3 point lead on the Argos, and you're pretty much not going to catch Montreal. You probably don't have to worry about the crossover. We're going to talk about that a bit later in the show. So, what is your game plan for the next 3 4 weeks in Ottawa?
This is the first time Ottawa's been a, a threat in 5 years. I'd say
Yep.
you just keep the pedal to the metal because you
Yeah.
never know if Montreal's going to fall off. I'm not going to sit there and you have a young quarterback in Drew Brown who's already had nicked up a couple of times. He can use all the game experience he can get until you get
Yeah.
to November, right?
Yeah.
Like if the final week of the season you're sitting at second, you're clinched into second, or you're clinched into third, or whatever the situation may be. Normally, you're thinking, "Hey, I'm gonna sit my starters," right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe you play him for a quarter or two, just because he hasn't had the reps some of the other starting quarterbacks in the league have. You have a handy backup in Jeremiah Mazzoli.
Yeah.
You also have talent enough to get you through a game from the other quarterbacks on your roster. Like, I think you just go full bore. Why wouldn't you?
Okay.
Give your fan base something to cheer about for the first time in 5 years. Like, I'm not even thinking about, oh, we need to start worrying about sitting people once we get into a certain spot. No, in Ottawa, let's remind them why they fell in love with this team in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Okay. Fair enough. I like it. I like it. Okay. That was the blowout of the week, by the way, 7 points. Final game of the week was Montreal Alouettes 21, Edmonton Elks 17. Okay. As an Als guy, I was not very confident about this game. Uh,
Which says a lot about the changes Edmonton's made
oh, yeah.
and just the complete vibe change on that franchise in the last month.
Well, yeah. 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 I from the Elks' perspective, I mean, I would have liked it more if Trey Ford had been playing in this game. Actually, because of my lack of confidence, I didn't want to induce any bad juju, so I didn't want to actually bet against the Alouettes. I did take them and pick them as well. So I had a bet on the Elks plus 8.5, right, which was the line in this game, and but I'll tell you what, I chickened out. I called back the bet when I found out that Cody Fajardo would be starting for the Owls and Trey Ford would not be starting for the Elks. And okay, it was 17-6 at half, and I was kicking myself for pulling back that bet. But, it's okay. You can't lose what you don't play, right? So no problem. I'd rather have this win by the Alouettes. Clearly, Cody Fajardo was a little rusty at the quarterback. He did go 5 for 5 for 68 yards on that first drive, which is, I like to see that. You want to see that from your quarterback. You want to see the one competent drive that well planned out, et cetera, et cetera. But in the second quarter, it's just 3 of 7, 35 yards, one interception. So again, kind of kicking off that rust. But here we go. 17-6 at half. Guess what? It's the Alouettes. Halftime adjustments. On offense, the Owls came out of the locker room. They said, "Hey, let's throw the ball to Cole Speaker. He's not on Oz Davis's fantasy team, is he? Oh, of
He was
course not.
on mine, and that might have gotten me the win. I
Nice.
went with the guy from my daddy's alma mater, UW Lacrosse, and it paid off.
Nice. Nice. I wish I'd had your foresight. 4 catches, 77 yards, and the touchdown on that first drive in the third quarter. And by the time the fourth quarter rolled around, Cody Fajardo was more into things. And wow, on that last touchdown pass, what a throw. I mean, he was getting hit, smeared as he threw that ball, and it was just a bullet to Spreaker for that second touchdown. Please, as an Alouettes fan, more of this Fajardo, please. Let's cruise. Meanwhile, again, coming out of the half, adjustments. The defense decides to take away that short pass. Okay? I shouldn't say not so much take it away, but just cover it better. Right? In the first half, um, Bethel Thompson was 6 of 6 on passes of 10 yards or fewer. In the second half, okay, 12 of 16, but only 51 yards, one pick, one turnover on downs, 3 first downs only. And all of those came with 2.5 minutes remaining in the game. This is the second time the Alouettes defense has shut out the opposition at the half. It's the fourth time they have not allowed a second half touchdown this year. And it's the seventh time this season they have shut the opposition out in the third quarter. Wow. I love this defense. I love this defense. I want Ty Beverett. I'm going to say this. I've been wanting to say this for a few weeks now. I want Beverett for most outstanding player in the CFL this season. I
You're
honestly,
not the only one.
I this is the year. This is the year. There is no outstanding offensive performer anywhere in this league. There's not a quarterback that has killed it in every game this season. Okay, there's a couple of wide receivers in BC. They're not winning ball games. There's no outstanding halfback this year. I want a
Beg to
defensive
differ on
player
that
to be
last one.
MVP. Okay, how so? Who would you take
Really?
as an MOP?
I'm just talking about your statement that there's been no outstanding backs this year.
Well, okay. I shouldn't say no outstanding backs, but okay, no dominant backs, right? No, I don't know. I don't see that these halfbacks are winning games for any of these teams, and which I think should be the defining characteristic of the MOP. But I mean, I want 2011. I want Solomon Elamimian back here. I want a defensive player's MOP because really, some of the highlights of this season have been about Winnipeg defense and Montreal defense, especially. I mean, they're showing. So many of the teams in this league feel incomplete, and I mean that by saying teams like the Toronto Argonauts are not playing 4 quarters. They're not playing 4 quarters worth of solid football. Toronto is winning these games by playing 2 quarters. Toronto is winning these games scoring 18 points in the fourth quarter. Um, and on the other hand, you never have gotten the sense that Montreal and Toronto are out of these games. Montreal has had to come back, I think, 3 times in the last 4 weeks. You know, um, but they're able to do this because they play on the other side of the ball. And again, what the Alouettes do, and to a lesser extent, what the Bombers are doing coming out at half is just fantastic this season. They're just IQ points ahead of these other teams out there. So Beverett for MVP, MOP. Come on. Let's make it happen. I'm just loving this Montreal defense. Just fantastic. Fantastic to be an Alouettes fan. Elks. Edmonton Elks. Pyrrhic loss, Joe?
I don't think they had anything like they have nothing to lose at this point because they
Hmm.
burned it all down at what 0-7 or whatever they
Yeah.
had ended up at.
Yeah.
So the rest of the season is okay. Hey, if they sneak into a playoff spot, I'm not going to be upset. But it's going to be okay. We need to reprove that we belong in this league. Right now, they're proving that.
Okay. They could get a playoff spot, but it doesn't seem very likely. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. I just wanted to get in the word for our sponsor before we go on to next week. Royal Retros at royalretros.com. When they say retros, they are talking about retro memorabilia. At royalretros.com, you can get your baseball caps, jerseys, t shirts, long sleeve shirts, hoodies, jackets, and the proverbial more. Royal Retros has the gear and the paraphernalia representing dozens of teams from the USFL, Arena Football League, World Football League, XFL, several different versions, Football Canada, various pro hockey leagues. The WHA is one of them, ABA basketball, and of course, the Pacific Coast League and Negro League ball teams. Royal Retros means teams like the St. Louis Browns and Seattle Pilots, but also lots of cool defunct teams and logos, and some non existent teams like the Las Vegas Posse. All right. Best of all, get 10% off anything in the store when you use promo code RWBCFL at checkout. RoyalRetros.com, promo code RWBCFL for 10% off. RoyalRetros.com. Right. Let's get back into it. Now, Joe this week was the kid at Christmas. Well, not so much Christmas because there was only one present under the tree, but that is our first playoff scenario for 2024. Now, Joe, this is a
Ooh,
wild one. This is a good one. So please hit us with this one. We
I have
already
to
have a
pull.
playoff scenario.
I
This is
have to
great.
pull it up. I forgot all about that because it's
Oh,
August. Why are we talking about playoff scenarios?
right.
It's
Right.
because Montreal is
Yeah.
really, really, really good.
Yeah.
Let me go find
Hell
that.
of a
Here we
season.
go. All right.
Yeah.
So
This is wild.
now Montreal is off on a bye week this week,
Yes.
but they can clinch a playoff berth during Labor Day weekend. And they could do it in August because Ottawa plays BC on Friday the 31st.
Right.
Or Saturday the 31st. I'm sorry. I'm used to Friday being football day. And I'm sad it's not this week. Saturday the 31st. So, assuming they don't go past midnight and win the game, Montreal clinched the playoff berth because at 10-1, Montreal currently has 20 points.
Right.
They can fall no lower than third place in the East because Hamilton can't catch them already. Montreal can only be denied a postseason berth by way of crossover. I
Right.
mean, good luck with that. An Ottawa victory versus BC would eliminate that possibility.
Right.
The
Right.
resulting BC loss would not leave enough standings points available in the West Division to propel four teams to the minimum 21 points needed to eclipse Montreal, assuming Montreal decides to just, not show up for the next 7 games. Uh,
Wow. Wow.
so, so at some point here in the very near future, if it's not this week, it'll be soon. Um, now, if Ottawa and BC happen to play to a tie, there's another way for Montreal to get in.
Oh
All right,
wow! So a tie gets them
a
into.
tie and a Winnipeg win would knock Saskatchewan down to 6 losses and a tie, or I think they're already there. Montreal would clinch a playoff berth, is what they're saying,
Mhm.
because then there's not enough points available for both BC and Saskatchewan
Right.
and Calgary and presumably Winnipeg to all finish ahead of Montreal.
Right. So
Yes,
that's
we are in
I.
the. It's August, so we're in the very, very weird theoretical stuff.
Yeah. Oh, but see, this is why I love this. Okay, like American fans who have a problem with the Rouge. I mean, come back for this. I mean, because here you have Ottawa, who is chasing Montreal, could eliminate the possibility of the crossover. They're not eliminating BC, right? They're not, that's not the situation. No, they're actually eliminating the possibility, probably, for Calgary or Edmonton to sneak in, right? Which is
No, they're
wild.
eliminating the possibility of Montreal being caught
Yes,
by
yes,
the crossover.
right,
Because they
right,
already can't be caught by Hamilton, because Hamilton has 9 losses, Montreal has 10 wins. There's
right,
no way to make that math work.
right, right. Hamilton cannot win the East. Not much of a threat there, but
No.
they cannot. So, but yeah, I just love that scenario. A game with involving two teams is going to end up affecting like the other 4 or 5 teams in the league by this playoff scenario. Fantastic stuff. Fantastic stuff. Be interesting to
Oh,
see.
just wait till October. It always gets really chaotic and fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's going to get fun.
And lately, it's just been to be who is going to serve as the whipping boy for the East and West finals. Except, well, last year they didn't work out so hot for one of those teams, did it?
Yeah. I mean, the way that the West is going right now, I mean, this could come down to the final week. I mean, if seriously, a game and a half separates the top 4 teams. I think Edmonton is 3 games out. I mean, come on. This is insane. It's
I
crazy.
don't hate Winnipeg's position because Winnipeg has the tiebreaker over BC and Calgary. They have a chance to take it over Edmonton too, and by doing that, they'd probably just wipe Edmonton right off the map at that point. And Saskatchewan's still in play. I mean, that would require winning Labor Day, which you know how that goes. But it's on the table. I mean, considering this team started 0-4, we couldn't ask for a better position to be in at this moment after that start.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I mean, I went to the standings board the other day, and after the games had come in, and first I was looking at that right hand column. I wanted to see how many points were separating these top 4 teams, and then I looked over on the left, and it's like, Winnipeg is now in second. It's just like, what? But I get the feeling that this is going to happen these next few weeks. I think we're going to see a lot of shuffling in that West, especially if BC keeps playing the way BC is playing. And it's just going to be a lot of movement there the rest of the season. It's all going to be around 500 too. So pretty interesting stuff in the West this year. And of course, I'm very happy that my Owls are running away with things. Okay, going to talk about next week's games, but I just wanted to say this first, Joe. I wanted to thank you very much. I know I haven't been talking about fantasy football very much this season because, I am brutal. I can't pick a damn thing this year. Actually, I had 85 points this year, so that was a moral victory for me. I don't even know if I won my game, but it's a moral victory for me to get that many points. I haven't seen that many points in months. But in any case, so thanks for keeping up the side in the Rouge, White, and Blue. Joe is in 4th place. I believe still in 4th place, right, in the Canadian Football Podcast
Let's see.
Network.
The results literally just came out as we're recording. So Cole Speaker did win me my matchup.
Nice.
I think I finished. If Burgos Fancast was second, Rouge was 3rd, so he's pretty upset because he was facing me. So that's just how that all works out. You happen to be facing Turf District next week. I happen to be facing Cooper Trooper next week from the Canadian Football Countdown. And I am now in 3rd place by points because 2 9-3s, I'm 8-4, and Steve from Piffles is 8-4, but I have more points than him. And hopefully my team has more points than his team on Sunday, but I'm not counting on it.
Yeah, you got to get that Canadian Football Podcast Network title back where it belongs, Joe. In the States.
I've never actually held the belt because I didn't want to make them mail it.
Fantastic. International mail. Okay, so let's talk about next week's games. Now, next week, Montreal has the bye for the Labor Day weekend. And again, I got to say this. I tend to say this every year, but this proves that we need the Atlantic Schooners in this league. I want that Labor Day weekend, Montreal versus Ottawa game. I want that coast to coast game. I want BC versus Newfoundland, Halifax, whatever. I want that coast to coast game, really. And I hate Montreal having to buy every Labor Day. It's not as much fun for me, but fun weekend otherwise. Like I mentioned before, Ottawa Red Blacks the rematch at BC Lions or at Victoria Lions, let's say this week for a Pacific touchdown. Ottawa Red Blacks are 2.5 point underdog, probably taken into account the injuries and hoping that Nathan Rourke shows us Nathan Rourke circa 2021 again. Um,
And the coast to coast travel, and Matthew Betts back. I don't know if he's back in time to play, but I mean, it's the same playbook from last year, so maybe.
okay. Yeah, I think that just all things considered, maybe this is the chance for BC to end the skid. It would be pretty ironic if it happens in Victoria after they've been drawing such great gate at Vancouver these past few years. But yeah, I'm gonna say BC Lions ends the skid, stops the red hot Red Blacks.
I think so too. I just think between the injuries, the cross country travel, and I mean, Nathan Rourke's playing in his hometown too. It feels like it just doesn't feel like a game Ottawa's going to be able to go in there and steal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying they're not capable of it. This one took me a while to pick, but I'm going BC here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I just think this is not Ottawa's week. I think this week there's too many question marks for them this week. All right. Second game, Winnipeg Blue Bombers. 2 point underdogs. 2 point underdogs. It's a 6-1 Rough Riders. I feel like the sports books are buying into your trepidation, Joe. But nope. Riders got to prove it to me at this point. I'm going Bombers. I like the Bombers here in the upset, quote unquote. But I really think that the Bombers are hot and the Riders are not. And if this Bombers team is going to be in the Grey Cup game again, we're going to look back on this game and say this is one of the reasons why. I'm
I
going
sure
Bombers
hope
too.
you're right. I just
I'm
have
going
too
Bombers.
much trauma to even consider taking the Bombers.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
Just
Okay.
that's the right word for it too.
Trepidation, yeah. That's a good word.
Trauma
All right.
too.
Game three. Toronto Argonauts, 5.5 point favorites at Hamilton. Okay, now I'm looking at this one. I'm not the biggest fan of the Ticats this year. I think Kadeem Carey is going to have a heck of a game coming back off of that. Really getting shut down last week against Saskatchewan. I think Hamilton, he'll find a much more favorable defense. But I'm going to go with the upset here. I can't imagine that Hamilton is going to go, 2-16 this year. I think their wins are going to come from somewhere. And I'm sorry, the Argos just not have been impressing me. Again, I don't think they've played well. Okay, maybe when they crushed Montreal in week 4 or 5 or whatever it is, that was their best game of the season. That was the only time I saw them play 4 quarters. So I just think that this is going to be a bit of a wake up call for Toronto. I'm going to take Hamilton. Hamilton in the upset.
I'm thinking the same as you are there.
Oh,
It's
wow. Nice. All right.
Hamilton's got a made the change in defensive coordinator. It seemed to pay some dividends later in the game once the players seemed to know more about what was going on. It's a Toronto team that's struggling right now. I mean, they're still fighting hard. They're still have a good
They're still
defense.
winning these games.
They're
They're
still
still
winning
winning these
games.
games.
It's just not as not they're not last year's team.
No.
Hamilton's got a lot to play for right now. They're basically playing for their jobs at this point because
Mm.
I mean I could see where you could pull the plug on the entire operation if things go really poorly this year.
Mhm.
So I could, and it's Labor Day at home.
Mhm.
If you can't get up for that as a Hamilton Tiger Cat, then you might as well just go home. So I got Hamilton.
Okay. All right. I like it. Okay. Final game. Edmonton Elks, 3-point underdogs at Calgary Stampeders. Now, all right. Calgary's coming off the bye. All right. We did this last time. Calgary's coming off the bye. Dave Dickinson is now 5-4 post 2020 after this year's win, overtime win against. I think that was the Bombers, maybe. Which is really the best game Calgary's played this season. I think that's a factor here. The Elks are pretty hot. But I did not like what I saw from Bethel Thompson last week. I mean, I liked it as an Alouettes fan, but I didn't think that he played extremely well last week. Geez, can I really pick Calgary? Is
I mean, I
Calgary
can. So go ahead.
okay? All right, then I'll take the Elks. I'll be contrarian. I'll take the Elks. Um, I can see this game going either way. It would be fascinating if Calgary won this game. That would really put a monkey wrench in the works there in the West, even more so, especially if BC loses, especially if the Riders lose again. Yeah, this would be a heck of a lot of confusion in the West. But I don't know. All things being equal, I kind of like the Elks more at this point than the Stamps.
I feel like the Elks have momentum right now.
Yeah,
I just don't
yeah.
like. I'm not taking visitors going into Labor Day. I'm
Mm,
also probably not taking visitors on the rebound on the back to backs between the two back to backs we have this year. So
mm, mm.
I think those two will split.
Yeah, it's smart to go with the split in general. Again, before all the injury news in Ottawa, I was very tempted to say, screw it, they're going to sweep. They're having a heck of a season, so they're going to sweep the Lions. But after the injuries, I can't say that. I got to believe that's a split. I'm not sure. Well, obviously, based on my play, I don't think the Bombers and the Riders are going to split. I think the Bombers are going to sweep them.
I hope you're
Again,
right.
yeah, I know
I'm
you
just
do.
not getting my hopes up.
Right. No, 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 you shouldn't. That's a smart thing to do. I mean, the truth is that, right now, the Riders are a 500 team. The Bombers are a 500 team. Just all things being equal, there's no reason to suggest that these teams do not split. Right. So that's the smart play. But I never said I was smart. So I'm going to stick to the Winnipeg sweep there. But yeah, the smart play here is just to bet on splits. Bet on the splits. It's very hard to sweep in professional football. Very hard to sweep in the CFL with so much familiarity between these teams.
And these teams are so
So
dang close to each other too.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like besides Montreal and maybe Ottawa, like
yeah.
who's good in this league?
Yeah.
Everybody else is like in the mushy middle.
Well, Ottawa is still the only team undefeated at home,
Yeah,
right?
like
So they have
Ottawa's
that.
got a few things going for them that
Yep.
push them up above that middle layer.
Yep. Yep. We'll see. Again, we'll see how they do this week. Bit of a mash unit going on there in Ottawa. So we'll see if they can pull off this one though. If they can pull off this one at BC, wow, respect. I am, as an Alouettes fan, I am more and more scared of this Eastern Final every week. Every week, these Red Blacks are more and more scary. And I would be less and less surprised if they were actually in the Grey Cup this year after upsetting the Alouettes in that Eastern Final. See, I'm already looking ahead to the playoffs here now that we've got our playoff scenarios out. Okay, well, let's wrap it for this week. Um, Anything else, Joe?
Nope.
Okay,
Labor Day.
great.
Let's. I know it's been a hard year to be a CFL fan. I feel it too.
Hmm.
Between the command center,
Huh.
between some of the some of the things that keep grabbing the headlines for all the wrong reasons. And just for the fact that, like, besides Montreal and maybe Ottawa, all of our teams are kind of like confusing the crap out of us and making some of our weekends a little bit more upsetting than they should be. Uh,
Yeah.
that said, like, this is the weekend to remember why we do this. So let's
Okay.
just go out and have a bunch of fun. And Winnipeg people, I will see you next weekend for the Banjo Bowl.
Well, yeah, but on the other hand, okay, there's always problems, it seems like, with referees and referee related issues. I mean, you remember the season when they tried to put in 3 challenges per coach and you can challenge anything, right? That was pretty tough to watch. There always seem to be problems like that. But Jesus, you gotta love the parity this year. I mean, again, we're on pace to have more games decided by a touchdown or fewer points than at any point this century. I mean, just this past week, 4 games by a touchdown or less. I mean, these games are going down to the wire, you know. So in that respect, it's been a heck of a season. I mean, okay, CFL Pick'em is tough. What else is new? You know, that's not different. You know, so despite the fact that I'm getting my butt kicked in fantasy, I think this has been a great season. This has been really interesting. Really interesting. And that West is only going to get more interesting, I think, after Labor Day weekend. So, happy Labor Day weekend to everybody on both sides of the border. Enjoy the games this week. My name's Oz Davis. For my co host Joe Pritchard, this has been the Rouge, White, and Blue CFL podcast, a production of the Shotgun Sports Network. We'll talk to you next week.